So, hello, my name's Koi. I don't have any more nicknames. Everybody just calls me Koi.
Hi, I'm Archaic Pariah, also known as Dylan, which some people call me, as in most people.
Hi, I'm Bumble. Some people call me Robin though.
Hi, I'm Crash, I'm Chaotic.
Hello, I'm Nonami, in case you didn't know.
Hi, I'm Petal, but I also go by Summer.
Today, Bumble has prepared a story for us, but first I wanted to thank the user Melly's Life, who made some suggestions that we have introduced today. If you like these changes, make sure to let us know, or if you have any other suggestions, feel free to put them in the comments. Now I'll hand it over to Bumble.
So, it's not quite as intriguing as the case we had last week, but this week we are looking into John Wayne Gacy. He is often called the Killer Clown, and he is one of the worst serial killers in US history, raping and murdering at least 33 young male victims. He buried most of these under his house, but others were recovered from the nearby Des Plaines River. We'll start with his very early life. Gacy was born in 1942 in Illinois. His parents were Danish and Polish, and he had, I think, 2 siblings. And they grew up with an alcoholic father who would beat the children with a razor strap if they were perceived to have misbehaved. His father also physically assaulted their mother. Gacy's sister Karen would always say to him that the siblings learned to toughen up against the beatings and that Gacy would not cry.
That's pretty mean.
Yeah, it's not. Then this is family. This is. He suffered further alienation at school, and because he was unable to play with the other children due to a congenital heart condition. The issue with this is that his father saw this as another failing on his part. It doesn't get any better though, because he later realized that he was attracted to men, and because of his father probably would view it as another failing, he experienced great turmoil over his sexuality. Not much else is known about Gacy's early life, but what we do know is that by the 1960s he was a fast food chain manager, and by the time he made it to the 70s, he was a building contractor and a Democratic precinct captain in the Chicago suburbs. He was very well liked in his community, and he organized cultural gatherings and was very active in political organizations and that kind of thing. He married and divorced twice, and he had 2 biological children and 2 stepdaughters. One other thing one side job he had was that he was a member of the Chicago area Jolly Joker clown club, and frequently performed in clown attire and makeup at children's parties. When he killed, he also sometimes dressed as his alter egos, Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown.
Can't trust clowns.
Yeah, clowns are always the worst people. No offense to
This is where the fear of clown comes from.
I mean, they
I'm
have
not
a
so-
relevant purpose.
How many altars did he have?
There was just the 2. He was either Pogo or Patches, but they were very similar in look, so they may be
Wait.
the same name for this, different names for the same alter ego.
Does anyone have phobias of clowns here?
Sorry?
No, not seriously.
I'm going to develop one after this.
Yeah, but that.
Oh, I just feel like funny.
One other thing is, years later, when after he was caught and he was talking to the detectives under surveillance, while discussing his work as a clown, he did in fact say, and this is an exact quote, "Clowns can get away with murder."
I don't think so,
Yeah.
Chief.
I feel like
Time.
everyone's first suspicion is a clown.
I mean, if they
There's definitely a red flag, yeah.
if they're getting caught red-handed, you can just do some honk honks and everything's good.
Imagine you hire a clown for your child's birthday party, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, clowns can get away with murder."
I suppose they do always have that getaway car, don't they? The clown car.
That isn't, in fact, the most concerning quote that has come from him, though, because he also stated when he was caught, he should never have been convicted of anything more serious than running a cemetery without a license.
If
Well,
I
Fucking
said I was running a
balls.
hospital without a license, uh,
well,
well,
That's
you know,
significantly more dangerous.
and he was a murderer.
so despite
It's
people
not that he was running a
he killed,
cemetery. It was like he was running a, I don't know, a self-serving
Slaughterhouse.
cemetery. Slaughterhouse.
Well, here's the thing, right? So he became he became a building contractor and he became the Democratic precinct captain in the 1970s. But his first conviction was actually in 1968, and he was convicted of sexually assaulting 2 teen boys, and he was given a 10-year prison sentence. But after only 2 years, so in the summer of 1970, he was released on parole, and he was rearrested again in 1971 after another teen accused Gacy of sexual assault. But this time the charges were dropped because the boy didn't appear during the trial.
That's really dodgy.
ah,
That is a stupid reason to drop the charges.
Because it was different
like-
times.
Well,
so he had a 10-year sentence. He got out after 2 years of this crime, and then
immediately
the
committed
charges
another
dropped.
one.
That's-
Immediately committed another
yeah,
got out, immediately
And
committed
no one-
another one, but he didn't go in this time because the boy didn't appear.
Well, there's no
To
way.
be fair,
Yeah, you have to
if
bring the charges to bring the charges.
yeah,
and
if
the
someone
boy
is
didn't
being
appear.
killed and the victim isn't going to show up, just drop the charges. Everything's good, right?
Can I ask, was the victim who didn't appear at trial or didn't press charges, did they die?
Well, we'll get onto that because 2 more young males had accused him of rape by the middle of the 1970s, and he was actually questioned by the police about the disappearances of others that may or may not have accused him. When questioned by the police after being caught, he actually referred to this part of his life as his cruising years, where he committed most of his murders.
Not how I refer to my cruising years. No one's going to jump on that? Okay.
Could you say it was a slow ride?
In answer to your question, Summer, so it's very possible that the boy didn't appear at the trial because he was killed, but maybe he was just too scared when it actually came to it. One specific date we have is that on December the 11th in 1978, a 15-year-old called Robert Priest went missing. It was reported to the police that the boy was last seen by his mother at a drugstore where he worked, before he headed out to meet Gacy to discuss a potential construction job. 10 days later, so that'd be the 21st of December, the police searched Gacy's house in Norwood Park, Illinois, and uncovered evidence of his involvement in numerous crimes, including murder. It was later discovered that Gacy had committed his first known killing in 1972, taking the life of 16-year-old Timothy McCoy after luring the youth to his home. There's a couple of other deaths that obviously the police knew about beforehand, but they actually they properly investigated his house and they set up surveillance and everything. And they actually went into the crawl space under his house at one point, and they discovered several trenches filled with human remains. And Gacy himself eventually confessed that he'd killed about 30 people.
That's a lot.
He acts like that's something to be proud of.
Now,
So
what's-
actually, it wasn't like 3 people; it was 30.
are we sure it
See.
was 30? Because some criminals, when once they've already been caught, they do confess to more murders than they have actually done. Because
Well, there was
If honestly,
there,
if
there
I
was,
would
there
get
was enough bodies down at the bottom. We know there was more than 24 because there was 8 bodies that couldn't be identified from the remains under his house at the time. Obviously they were still working on those, and in 2017, so only 3 years ago, victim number 24 was identified as the 16-year-old James Jimmy Byron Hackinson. I think I'm pronouncing that right. It's Haak. But so it would have been, hold on, I've got to work out the maths. 41 years it took them roughly to discover exactly who he was, though, because it was in 1976 they reckon he was murdered because he left his home in St. Paul, Minnesota, and traveled to Chicago to begin life in the city at the age of 16. So I wouldn't have liked to have done that at the age of 16. But on August the 5th, he called his mother to let her know he had arrived, and the police reckon that Gacy had killed him very shortly thereafter. So it took 41 years for them to identify his body. And then it took the mother 3 years because obviously he was caught. He was arrested in 78, and in 79, Hackinson's mother actually contacted the authorities to see if her son was one of the victims, but because there was no dental records and the department didn't have the resources to identify him, it was unknown whether he was a victim. And his mother unfortunately died in the early 2000s, but other family members did provide DNA samples in 2017, which is how it was found out that this James Byron Hackinson was victim number 24.
So
Yeah.
the mother died without knowing
The
that,
mother never knew
or
whether
without knowing
her son was killed by Pogo the clown. It's really sad.
I hate
What to
that.
say?
Pogo
That's a
the
weird
clown.
sentence
I
to
hate
have
it.
to say. Sounds funny.
His name is
In answer
Pogo
to your
the Clown.
question, it's reckoned to be 33 murders, but there may be more bodies that haven't been discovered.
That's a lot of damage.
I mean, in response to 33...
A very
I understand the comment about running a graveyard without.
I mean, as a punishment for his 33 murders, he was given 12 death sentences.
In case the first one didn't get him.
12,
That's fun.
I mean, you
Well,
can't be
you don't know
so
how-
sure with clowns.
just in case.
I was going to say, you
Any-
don't know how many
You
lives
know,
a clown has.
the old adage, every clown has 9 lives.
Oh, no, you were right the first time. Every clown has 9 eyes.
Oh no.
The other 7 are secrets.
God.
Honestly, if he's going to die anyway, they would just say like, "Yeah, I killed 69 people," just
Nice.
for the record.
Nice.
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 The entire there's just a nod from everyone in court going, nice.
69 people, awesome.
Just one guy in the back going, "Hey!"
No, it's the
You
lawyer.
killed my nephew, but hey!
It's
like that
the
one-
lawyer trying to get him convicted, and the lawyer's just like, hey.
It's like that one Spider-Man meme with Tobey Maguire when he's crying, but then he's
Hey,
smiling while
that's
crying in the next picture. Dylan, you should put that on the screen in editing.
You don't have
I'll
much,
send it.
do you?
Chop,
Huh?
Dylan.
I'll send it to you.
I expect it to be in 1080p as well. Just that bit.
It's just
The whole
brief.
video's in 1080p.
Well, now I expect it in 4K. Now you've heightened my standards.
Oh no.
So while the police searched his house at the end of 1978, and presumably this lengthy period of the surveillance took a couple of months, we'd be looking at 1979 that he was arrested. But his trial itself didn't begin until February 1980. He did confess to the crimes, though. He confessed to all of the crimes, but there were many arguments that were focused on whether he could be declared insane and thus remitted to a state mental facility. Gacy had mentioned to the police that the murders had been committed by an alternate personality, and mental health professionals testified for both sides about Gacy's mental state. The jury, it was quite a short jury deliberation, but Gacy was ultimately found guilty of committing 33 murders, and he became known as one of the most ruthless serial killers in US history. He was sentenced to serve 12 death sentences and 21 natural life sentences.
Wait, is there even really a point at that point? It's just...
Well, a natural life sentence is minimum of 25 years. So 20 times 25, you're looking at, what, 525 years?
They
Come
believe
on,
this
Nona.
guy's immortal, so
He killed
Plus-
33 people. He needs to get something
And
at
again, he's
least.
got 12 years
So he had to spend the minimum of 525 years in prison, plus had to die 12 times.
I think the idea of that is so that if they do get out on, like, I don't know, they get a reduced sentence or anything, just through some jury mishap, then they're still going to be in prison for their entire lives. I think that's the only reason to do it like that.
Okay. So it's just like you gotta get through 12 of these barriers if you're gonna live. Or, you know, like join the Suicide Squad.
You know, you don't need to make it sound like the Olympics.
Oh god.
What I should have mentioned at an earlier point is that Gacy's house was actually just east of the airport. So presuming that the kid that traveled to Chicago to start his life in the city, it wouldn't have been very far from the airport he would have traveled in order to end up in Gacy's hands. And there were several occasions that family members and visitors came over, and they all said that the house had a very unusual stench, but Gacy would always just turn around and go, "Oh, it's just mold or rodents." It was a simple one-story ranch house in a middle-class neighborhood, and there was a trap door leading to the crawl space that was beneath the house, and that's where he would dispose of the bodies. Some were buried in the backyard, though, and others were dumped in the nearby Des Plaines River. The house itself was dismantled during the investigation in 1978, when they tried to find more evidence, and it was all demolished in 1979, and a new house was eventually built. But one of the workers that was involved in the demolition actually said, "If the devil is alive, he lived here."
That's intimidating.
Can I ask, do we know if anyone moved into the lot after the
does anyone
old
live
house
there
was
now?
demolished?
Presumably,
Imagine buying a house and you find out that it was actually the
I wonder if the
ex-house
crawl
of a
Cheap
I
prices.
wonder if they
isn't it?
rebuilt a
Clan
crawl
serial
space under it.
I mean, it's
I think you legally have to list that happened in that house before you can sell it to someone.
shout out to whoever has there
I bet they
now.
absolutely love it.
Thanks.
They've got some great stories to tell at, like, dinners.
Just they throw a house party. Yo, people were raped and
Swimming
murdered here.
party.
and this is where he
It's not
hid the
gonna-
bodies.
It was in 1980 that he was given all of these sentences, and he was imprisoned in the Maynard Correctional Center in Illinois for almost a decade. Sorry, almost a decade and a half, because it was 1994. And he both appealed the sentence and offered contradictory statements on the murders during interviews. Even though he had confessed, he actually later denied being guilty of all of the charges, and he had a 900 telephone number set up with a 12-minute recorded statement declaring his innocence and why he was innocent.
Didn't he already? Didn't they
They'd
already
found the bodies
bodies at
under
that
his
point?
house. He'd admitted to murdering and everything, and then all of a sudden he turned around and said, "Wait, no, I'm innocent." And set up.
Did he say what? Like,
They ran into my
do-
knife every
do you
single
have-
time.
Yeah. Do you have the reasons why he said he was?
They ran into
Oh
my
god.
Nope, I don't have anything from the recorded statement.
So I just on this website and it shows his last meal, which is
Is it little boys?
fried chicken, French fries,
That's a
Coke,
pretty
and
good last.
strawberry
Sounds
I would
pretty good.
happily die.
I feel like there are better things
last
to have.
meal.
I don't know if the phone number's still up, but I'm reading because this is an article from 1993. But there was a calling toll of about $3 or $4 a minute, and Gacy and it says Gacy and the morbidly curious could hook up telephonically. Gacy taped and sent to a Florida firm a 900 number message of up to 11 minutes. When a dialer plea becomes available, in the tape, a rambling Gacy claimed complete innocence, and a literary source who has heard it said Gacy seems to have lost any sense of reality. So presumably the actual tape itself isn't available. But it would very much appear that he did lose touch with reality whilst he was while he was serving his sentences. He was killed by lethal injection on May the 10th, 1994, at the Stateville Correctional Center. So he actually moved correctional center before he was killed. But interestingly enough, while he was imprisoned at the Maynard Correctional Center, he actually took up studying the visual arts, specifically painting. And there was actually an exhibition that was shown to the public at a Chicago gallery, where they showed off all of the paintings that he had made while he was serving his sentences. And many of his paintings actually depicted Gacy as the clown itself.
Do we have pictures of these?
I'm sure that there's easily going to find some, because interestingly enough, in 2017, Mullock Auctions actually auctioned off a number of his artworks.
Yeah, I'm sure some people would love that stuff.
I really wish I'd known about this in 2017, because I would have 100% bought some. Like, genuinely, imagine how cool that would be to turn around and say that you have a murderous painting in your house.
I don't know if cool's the right word.
Yeah, I don't think cool's the right word either.
I think that'd be pretty cool.
Awesome. It would, thank you.
I've just got different hobby ideas.
Of his paintings. I'm gonna have to
Look
double
for
check.
them
I
after the
believe these are his.
I would say
although,
it's interesting.
although, 3 of the paintings,
Oh my god, the
managed
last
to
one.
get sold. So there was 11 paintings that were auctioned off, and 3 of them sold. One of them was called I'm Pogo the Clown, and that sold for £4,000. And they called him Mr. Gacy, which only sold for $325. However, the other 8 works went very much unsold.
Who got the money?
Presumably the place that auctioned them off, because they would have presumably had to have bought it from Chicago. But
Alright.
that shows that other people think it's cool to buy a killer's paintings. If someone was willing to
I
spend
literally
$4,000,
said that a certain kind of person would love to buy that up.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm one
it
of them.
would
I
be
would
me.
spend, if I had $4,000, I would spend it on a painting
Of a
from
serial
murder-
killer.
Of a serial killer.
Can we elect Bumble as being the one who's most
I am
likely
also
to get cursed?
The most likely one to
Just
become
from
a
that
serial
alone.
killer. There was actually a television movie in 1992 titled To Catch a Killer, which explored the efforts to find out what happened to all the teenage boys that went missing, who were later discovered amongst Gacy's victims. Apparently, one of the stars of the show, Brian Dennehy, Gacy actually wrote a letter to him from prison while they were filming it, protesting his portrayal in the film and proclaiming his innocence. Which I think is... I want to know what happened between the time that he confessed and then the fact he went into that much of a meltdown that he made a 12-minute tape confessing his proclaiming his innocence. He wrote a letter to a star movie actor proclaiming his innocence, and even on his deathbed, he was still trying to proclaim his innocence. Like, that's a lot of... He was very, very determined to not... To be innocent all of a sudden, I think it was as he realized he was going to die or something.
I can imagine during the trials I can imagine maybe the reality of it was sort of setting in. Because if they found the bodies and then he admitted to killing 33 people...
Oh
he
yeah,
probably
that was
did
me,
that.
by
He
the
was
way.
like, oh yeah, but, you know.
It was a flex.
It was probably
Wait,
him
why
trying to brag about
am I
it, but
being
then when he gets to
handcuffed?
trials
Guys?
and he realizes he's fucking child death
Doing
sentences.
I've actually,
Yeah,
after
exactly.
doing further research, there were 26 victims that were found in the crawl space. So and only 18 of those were identifiable at the time. I don't know how many of them have been identified at this point, but there were 26 under the crawl space, and then I'm assuming there was maybe 4 or 5 buried in his backyard, maybe. Oh no, sorry, 3 buried in his backyard, and the last 4 were discarded into Plains River. So there we go. Exactly how many?
Wow.
And his typical law to get the victims to his house would be well, he would lure them to his house, and then what he'd do is he'd go, well, I'm a clown, I can do, like clown tricks, I can do magic. And what he would do is he would like put handcuffs on them, going, oh look, I'll show, look, oh, there won't be a key and you'll be able to get out of the handcuffs. And that's at the point he would then torture and rape his victim, and then they were normally killed either by asphyxiation or they would be strangled with a garrote, which is very much that I would say that goes 0 to 100, but it really doesn't.
That's yikes.
Oh,
So it's very obvious that he deserves.
yes, it was
death
KFC.
sentences, I feel.
Interestingly enough, the fast food restaurant that he became a manager of.
Isn't that his last meal? Was fried chicken?
It was, yes.
I think it was.
That's fascinating that that his last meal was. I wonder if he actually got a KFC.
That'd be interesting.
I'm Cohen. I'm 17, turning 18 soon enough. Go follow me on why shouldn't I actually on Instagram, and GloomyXGay on Twitter. Thank you.
I am Dylan, also known as Archaic Pariah, and I am on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, all under Archaic, and also Instagram, all under Archaic Pariah. So follow me and catch the best.
I didn't want this.
So I'm Lega, but my friends call me Crash. You can basically just check me out on Instagram under Lega with 3 underscores because someone stole the other ones. And any other social medias you would want are linked in the bio of Instagram.
Hi, I'm Donami, in case you didn't know.
Hi, I'm Petal. I don't have anything to plug, unlike these guys. I mean, I guess I got a Twitter, but I don't know what else to say.